the top tier Harvard Ivy School of Business startups, a lot of people have been in each of them and they've transitioned. But I think, as much as they pay really good salaries, people go, I want to go to Google because there's something exciting happening there. And people are doing stuff and they're making moves. And I want to be a part of a community that falls around it. And I don't think some of those companies are as desirable as what they once were.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that are ex-Facebook and ex-Google and ex-Tesla and wherever that journey is taking them. Because it's not a surprise that innovative people want to be in innovative places.
Yeah.
And good people want to be in good places. And people that want to express culture and be a part of a team want to be in a team that has culture. So I think it's a hard thing to build, but it's also equally difficult to maintain. And I think some of those companies built that and were the place to be once upon a time and may or may not have kind of lost their way along the way and lost really, really key foundational talent.
Hey, it's Julian from LoanOptions.ai, and today I've got a very special guest with me.
This is Fabien Tribe. I'm director of the Lending Lab.
Thank you so much for coming here today. I'm really looking forward to this chat, and you do a lot of things, and I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into your your history and how you got to where you are today, because I think like a lot of people just look at the destination and go, it must be luck or must be they'll find 1,000 reasons why you are where you are today. But oftentimes there's the origin story that helps make a lot of sense and helps understand where you built the work ethic and the skills that you obtained along the way and the mentorship that you may have had, all that kind of stuff. So let's start by rewinding and sort of give us the lowdown.
Well, look, I think I would love to say that I had this really clear direction from day one of exactly where I wanted my career in business to go. It's kind of like trying to find a path through the forest where the flashlight only has like 1 or 2 meters ahead of you and you kind of just angle in front of you the path that you can actually see. So if you go back far enough, I worked at Blockbuster when I was in high school, kind of, just in video games and doing DVDs and stuff like that. But probably my first major role was working at Harvey Norman selling beds. I didn't quite realize that selling white squares that were really expensive, but it was a product that had tangible value to the customer. It was just really hard to explain the features, the benefits, why it's important, how it should work. Spent a lot of time guiding people through that selection process. So that's probably where I learned A, how to deal with rejection, and B, how to deal with sales and communication skills and following up. I just didn't realize that it wasn't the path I wanted to follow until I got very close to getting my own store and then kind of realized that their model was a little bit broken. So I started looking around at what would have better long-term potential for me and probably was more aligned to where I wanted to go. My first thought was either banking, if that didn't work, real estate, and if that didn't work, insurance. So I started at ANZ as a teller. I took a 30 grand a year pay cut and a bit of an ego hit at the same time and did the counting the coins and cashing the checks and filling the ATMs and kind of had to swallow a little bit of pride there. Moved my way through retail banking, became a small business specialist, then was a business banking manager. So you're kind of doing 200 to 1 mil of, secured and unsecured business loans. Got headhunted out of there into Aussie Home Loans to run their whole mobile mortgage broker team in SA. Eventually looked after the retail channel, got pulled into Sydney into a head office role. So I was the senior manager for national sales operations, but really came to the conclusion that I wanted to build something of my own, which is the Lending Lab, which is what I run now. So I'm over 10 years in the industry. Lending Lab this week just did 2 years of trading. So it's a bit of an exciting moment for us. But it hasn't been a linear journey from point A to point B, which I'm sure you can relate to.
Never is.
Of kind of one step at a time of kind of, figuring out what you want, but also what's important to you and what you're good at to then try and kind of find reward and fulfillment through that process.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess you've probably learned a few different things there, right? So, Blockbuster, obviously if you don't adapt, you don't survive.
Yeah.
But then, moving to Harvey Norman, like that model, it's been around for a while, and we're sort of seeing the rise of like a lot of these sort of online e-commerce businesses that now don't have the bricks and mortar stores, but they're still selling a lot of beds or sort of more of a no frills. Like, hey, we don't have the big fancy stores, but our beds are really comfortable. Like, you've almost seen a shift in the marketing or the way beds are marketed. But yeah, so you start your own business, and what was the day or the time you remember where you're like, nah, that's it, I'm done? There's usually when you dig a little bit, there's usually a
There were kind of 2 or 3 moments, and then like the culmination of them kind of hit me in the face. The first one was, I realized that we were spending probably 70% of our work week making PowerPoint presentations to present that to, senior leadership. Then you realize that most of the PowerPoint presentations you make never actually get presented. You get it all ready, you get it, all the data, all the appendix and everything's ready. And then on the day they go, the agenda's changed, we've changed direction, don't worry, you're not presenting it anyway. I kind of had a moment where I'm like, I'm getting paid really well. Like, it's a senior role, but like, what am I actually doing for this? Am I actually contributing anything of value? And then I found the politics within a big corporate environment. There were some wonderful people that I worked with that I really, really enjoyed, and I think they're phenomenal people. But there's always a couple of people that are more interested in how can I sabotage a project or drag someone else down so I can kind of move myself up. And I kind of had a realization that if I was going to stay and keep climbing that ladder, would I have to become that to be successful in that environment? And is that really kind of who I want to be? Like, I'm 34, so if I'm going to work till I'm 65, I've got 31 years left of my working life. Like, is that
how you want to be spending it?
Yeah.
And some people you want compromising your morals and values.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, that's very admirable, and people who know me know that I'm all about that. The sort of making sure you do not, under any circumstances, compromise who you are as a person. Even when people will try and drag you through the mud, try and bring you to their level. It's really important that you stay true to who you are.
Yeah.
And I think if you can get through your career and, people speak highly of you and people respect you and people, can call you reliable, dependable, trustworthy, all those sorts of, really, really good virtues that you can have, then I think that's what success looks like. And maybe you don't reach the highest of highs, but you also probably avoid the lowest of lows by doing it that way as well, because people will come to you, and opportunities when you're reliable, dependable, trustworthy, and highly competent as well, might I add, people will present you with opportunities throughout your career. And for some people, they go down the path of continuing to climb that corporate ladder, and then they might reach a ceiling and they're sort of happy with that ceiling. But I think when you're someone who is aspiring or aiming for more, and I'm not talking about more money, I'm just talking about more, and that's fulfillment or, success, or to build a legacy, or to build a team of their own, and to run things without red tape. And that was always my goal. Starting my own business was like, I looked at all the mistakes I saw people make. I looked at all the unnecessary red tape in businesses. And, there's one story where the business I was in, and I was employee number 1. I built it from the ground up.
So you're there day one.
I was there day one. They eventually got acquired by and I was just an employee with a very, very minority shareholding. But they acquired, a publicly listed company acquired it, and there was a partnership agreement that I presented. It was a great opportunity. I sent the agreement to head office, to their legal team to review. That was just the process. It took circa somewhere between a year and 18 months for them to go back and forward and all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
Then eventually COVID happened. I left that business, started my own. I signed up that same partnership because they didn't do anything with it. I signed up that same partnership in LoanOptions.ai, and it ended up being one of the most lucrative partnerships we could have ever imagined. And so they missed 12 months, 18 months worth of revenue for red tape and for semantics in a legal contract. Like at the end of the day, the contract is there, for the worst case scenario, and it's important to have those things in place. But if the relationship's not working, it's as simple as providing notice or saying we're no longer going to work together, and the contract becomes at that point a moot point, because you're not obligated to continue to refer or service the clients if you've indicated you don't want to do that anymore. And equally, on the other side, if you're not performing or fulfilling the obligations of your side of the agreement, then they'll just tell you, sorry, it's thanks, but no thanks, it's not working.
Well, if you've got two partners that are really working in partnership, right, for
Yeah.
like mutual benefit, whatever the contract says, they're probably going to come to you or you come to them and go, it's not quite working. And in the spirit of cooperation, how can we tweak or adjust things to try and find something common? But I think people just don't measure the opportunity cost and weigh that against the cost of semantics or red tape in a contract.
Yeah.
What you go, okay, this clause might cost us $5,000, but if you're going to miss $500,000 because you spend 12 to 18 months waiting around, it doesn't make any sense.
It didn't make any sense to me, and it was one of the most frustrating things I think I'd ever seen. And I was just like, all right, I'm going to start my own business, and I'm going to make sure I never become that business.
Mm-hmm.
And, I do believe in sort of, making sure that you get everybody's buy-in with the decision. But as a leader, as a founder, as a CEO, you do need to be able to take decisive action.
Mm-hmm.
And, as long as you're doing it properly and using data to inform your decisions and whatever, those decisions that you make, and there's really two kinds, and Jeff Bezos talks about this, there's those decisions that you make, whether it's partnerships or other else, they're easily reversible. You enter into a partnership, it's not working, you either renegotiate the terms or you turn off the partnership and you kind of both go your separate ways. There are other types of decisions where I do think it's important to get the consensus or the buy-in of the team and things like that. And those are, and they require more time to make a decision, not 18 months, but and that's where the decisions could impact things that can't be reversed easily. So maybe the decision you make there could impact the culture of the business, or could leave the team feeling a little bit disjointed, or like you've created a 2-tier system or something where there's so there's things and decisions that should be thought about more carefully. If they're decisions that can be rolled back easily, then you should just, where possible, make them quickly and be willing to learn and monitor the progress of them. The other thing we've been doing very recently, we've always kept track of changes, but we've been formalizing that by means of a change log. So like every time we make a change, we write down the date and time that we made the change and the reasons we made the change. And then we sort of monitor the progress of the change we make. And that way it's almost like a versioning history of software, right? If it's buggy, you can just roll it back and then go back to this. You can't really do that with every decision, but the ones that, you're talking about process improvements, or if it doesn't work, don't stress. Just go back to what you were doing before, And if it does work, then you'll reap the rewards and you can double down on that and you can look for other opportunities to grow.
It's a really hard thing to do when you own a business, because there's, I don't know about you, but my change of pace of how quickly I want to implement changes is pretty rapid. I've got to kind of slow myself down, because if I go, let's introduce 5 or 6 things simultaneously, if the results move wildly in one direction or another, it can be really hard to pinpoint what you changed and what impacted it. So you change 5 things and you're kind of like, well, what is working and what isn't working? So a change log is really underrated.
Yeah, and I'll point out why that's important, what you just said as well, is because oftentimes when you make a bunch of changes at once, what actually happens is one change is making up the vast majority of the improvement, as an example, and the rest of them might actually be going backwards. But the one change that you did make that did improve, so maybe it looks like it's improved by 20, 30%, but if you take away all those negative changes, might have changed things by 100% or whatever it is, the improvement. So yeah, it is important not to change too many things at once, but if you're doing it frequently, and you're looking at the data and you're seeing, and depending on the sample size, 1 week might not be enough. A month might be better, but sometimes you don't need a lot to get the sentiment of the team. The team sentiment is if you make a change and the process is a bit more slick, a bit more fluid, clients, less friction points, they'll tell you pretty quickly, within a few customers, they'll be like, yeah, this is being received way better now.
Yeah.
And then you wait to see the data to confirm that, and then you cement the decision, and then you move on to the next one. It's like every now and again, there'll be 2 or 3 decisions or 2 or 3 changes that you make, I should say, that are sort of in line with let's say you're trying to improve the number of customers that supply supporting documents as an example. So you're looking at your funnel, you go, okay, like half of them don't supply documents or whatever it is. And then the ones that do, half of them get approved, like just making up numbers here. But, you might make 2 or 3 changes with the view that you're going to track and monitor each of them or A/B test each of them to see which ones help. And it might be an extra SMS follow-up, an extra email follow-up, or whatever it is that you're thinking about doing. Sometimes they complement each other really well. And so you don't really necessarily need to wait, but it is good if you can track and like how many people are responding to the SMS. It's a good idea to sort of understand that. And, what's the engagement we're getting with that follow-up versus just emails, Are people responding to the emails with the documents? That's a pretty good sign that those emails are working, Same thing with the SMS. Whereas if you're sending the SMSs and the emails and no one's responding and there's no way to track it and there's no way for you to know, it's going to take you much, much longer to see if that benefits the business. You might have to wait 2-3 months to see enough settlements come through and go, did our conversion rate increase? So it's really important to be able to track as close as possible to the customer interaction, the results of that. Then you can A/B test and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely the change log is important. You might make a change. We made a change where we used to have a buddy system and 1 broker support, 1 broker, and that was sort of how we moved it. We made it that way. But then before that, it was almost like a round robin. So you had a broker support person, and then they would push a deal into a broker when it was ready for a broker to assess it, but they wouldn't get to pick which broker. It would just go into a round robin.
So you went from 1 to many to 1 to 1.
Exactly. And for some people, 1-to-1 worked really well. And for some people that didn't work well at all. And so the reality is sometimes the changes you make will have a net positive effect. But for the ones that worked really well for, we kept that system in play. But for the ones that didn't work well for, we rolled it back. And so now there's a group of the team that have a dedicated one, and then there's a group that just have the 1-to-many. And that gave us the best results. So you can't just go, oh yeah, because it worked for our top performers, it's definitely going to work for everyone else. You almost have to find where are their synergies, and then even try moving them and finding a different partnership because they might have a better synergy. So this is what I love about business, is this never ending puzzle of trying to optimize and improve. And it's just, to me, it's just beautiful. There's nothing like it from a problem solving and just being personally challenged standpoint. But
it's the never ending game, right? And I think there's a lot of people that I do mentorship for in the broking space, and they'll go, what's the perfect formula and structure and process for my business to be successful? And it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's a constantly evolving animal, and you've got to experiment, you've got to test, you've got to measure, and you've got to adapt to it. And even if you figure everything out perfectly, technology and customers and landscape in the market is a forever moving tide.
Yeah.
So you kind of, I don't know, it feels more like you're controlling the ship in the ocean rather than controlling the ocean.
Yeah.
So, I find change fatigue. I'll be really interested to see how you manage this with your team. There's some people that get a bit excited by change, and if things are constantly growing and changing, they're kind of on the journey of finding new ways to do things and finding improvements. And then I find there are some people, they go, I just want to get through this change so that things can get back to normal, and then everything will be steady. And I feel like those people would really struggle in your business because everything's changing and evolving. You'd be going, it's not just this month we're getting through. We're always going to be growing and developing. So is it picking the right people for you, or is it trying to get them on board of knowing this isn't an ending, this is a journey that we're going down?
So in our company values, we have one called test and learn. And that is, continuous improvement. It's a variation of sort of these, but that's two components. One is we want people to continue to upskill and improve themselves, both professionally and personally. We pay for as many books as they want to read on us. We have a book club internally. We pay for any online university courses. We do all of that. Like, we want everybody to get better. It is expected that everybody tries to get better. And, a big part of having the ability to iterate is hiring the right people who aren't afraid of change, and who, from a leadership perspective, it's your job to make sure they understand exactly why you're asking them to change the way they do things. And more often than not, if their KPIs are aligned to the business's goals and things like that, then the changes that you're making are going to benefit them directly. But it's also to prevent change fatigue, because it is a real thing. You go, oh, here we go, another thing we've got to do. To prevent change fatigue, you do need to be willing to admit when you're wrong. And some people double down on changes that have made things go backwards. And sometimes they go, no, but, Johnny Smith, said it worked better. So, and he's the top performer.
Yeah.
That's we listened to the feedback from some of the people who were struggling with that one-to-one buddy system, because maybe they were paired with someone who probably isn't as diligent as them, or, whatever the situation might have been. So we're like, okay, it's worked for some people and it hasn't worked for others. So it's not for the sake of just making change and then having to have one change rolled out across the business. Let's just try things and let's experiment. That's in the DNA of our business. And when we're interviewing people, we've got a different recruitment process, and I'd love to sort of expand on that, because a lot of people think that recruitment is just something, it's just like a function of HR,
Read the resume, 6 rounds to interview, a blood test.
It's crazy. I mean, the thought of even a second interview is almost against everything I stand for, because it's like, look, if you're doing your job properly, then you're not doing this standard seek.com sort of post a job. Like, if you're doing your recruitment properly in your business, you have a constant stream of talent inquiring to join your team. And that happens all the time. We get 4 or 5 resumes a week from our website, not from an ad.
Wow.
And so if you're doing it properly, and you made a comment before about, it looks like the company culture and all this kind of stuff. But if you're doing it properly, then it's a function of sales and marketing, which means that the people in your team are responsible for being your advocates, and they're buying in little things like, what LinkedIn banner they have, and, they're using the company branding and the case studies that they post on LinkedIn and social media, and they're buying. When the employees buy into the brand, it's really, really powerful. It's really powerful, because everyone's like, wow, like, these people are proud to work for that company, or, for that leader, or for whatever. So that's one thing. But you need to be super active. Like, if people don't know who you are, and, they do a search and then, like, nothing really comes up, maybe a post from 6 months ago, they're like, oh, this doesn't seem like a really dynamic business. And these days a lot of people do it because we see it. What happens is they'll view my profile, they'll view the company profile, then they'll apply for a job on LinkedIn if we've got one posted. We really only use LinkedIn. And the amount of DMs I get, LinkedIn, even Instagram, the company page on Instagram, hey, have you guys got this and whatever, the careers site, the careers page on our website. It's about broadcasting your brand, your business, your team, more importantly, because if it's just you as the founder, They're like, yeah, okay, he might be a great guy, or, you know, he likes to be on camera a bit too much or whatever, you know. But, you know, when you're presenting the team and they're seeing everyone else get behind the brand and everyone else is having fun while they're at work, and that's not fake. You know, anybody who's walked into our business, they're like, I thought that was just all social media stuff, you know.
I came in today, I got offered a coffee by 5 people.
Yeah.
NWA was playing. It was like, it's got more culture in here than a tub of yogurt. It's great.
So, well, look, that's good. Thank you for that. I think the key part is like treat your team well, right? Stop thinking of it as like, oh, I'm going to just give it to a recruiter and let him put somebody on the seat. Stop thinking about it like that. Every action you make, your social media accounts, the content you put out, the brand in the market, your website, your everything is it's your shop front for people wanting to join your team. You know, there's a reason why for a while people wanted to join Google and Facebook and all these kinds of things. And now what you're seeing is less people. There's less. I mean, people still want to join those companies for sure. It's still very, you know, prestigious, but more so people want to join startups. And the reason for that is the quality of your time in a startup. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's long hours. Yes, it's a grind. Yes, all of that.
But you're a part of something.
You're going to be part of this trajectory. And if it's a good startup with good leadership and a good product, it's a winning formula. You know, it's something that you can feel proud of. Like, we put this as a group, put this into the market. We iterated, we improved, we made it better. We listened to our customers. We got X, Y, Z feedback, and then we executed. You can't really get that in a big business.
Well, like, I think as well, like they're really good examples. If you look at Facebook, you look at Google, you look at Tesla, you look at the top tier Harvard Ivy School of Business startups, a lot of people have been in each of them and they've transitioned. But I think, you know, as much as they pay really good salaries, people go, I want to go to Google because there's something exciting happening there. And people are doing stuff and they're making moves. And I want to be a part of a community that falls around it. And I don't think some of those companies are as desirable as what they once were.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that are ex-Facebook and ex-Google and ex-Tesla and wherever that journey is taking them. Because it's not a surprise that innovative people want to be in innovative places.
Yeah.
And good people want to be in good places. And people that want to express culture and be a part of a team want to be in a team that has culture. So I think it's a hard thing to build, but it's also equally difficult to maintain. And I think some of those companies built that and were the place to be once upon a time and may or may not have kind of lost their way along the way and lost really, really key foundational talent.
And it's not just that. It's like I always liken culture to a golf course. And I've said this a couple of times. I'm going to say it again. I don't care if people get annoyed, but it's the best analogy I can think of. And until someone gives me a better one, then I'll use that. So it's like culture is like a golf course, right? You have the greenskeeper who's responsible for initially keeping everything pristine, and they obviously have a routine that they follow, you know, after the weekend or whatever to keep it pristine. But along the way, the players, which is the staff members, and, you know, the greenskeeper is the leader or the founder or, you know, whoever's driving the people in the business. And so the players are the staff. And, you know, in golf, if you hit your shot, you're meant to fix up the grass that you damaged after you hit your shot. And if you don't, the course ends up looking like garbage. And that's culture. You know, there's a certain level of standards that and etiquette that need to be followed. And so that each staff member has to know that culture is also their responsibility. And there's saying that the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. And that's pretty much what I'm talking about here. Is like, if you're a staff member and the person next to you is gossiping about another staff member, you absolutely have a responsibility to say, listen, we don't do that here. Doesn't matter if you're senior or doesn't matter if that person's more senior than you. That's the responsibility that you have as a staff member. If you care about the culture in the business, understand that it is your job to maintain it too. The founder can do everything in his power to make sure, but if he's accidentally hired people that are a little bit toxic, before too long, you'll have everybody in the business gossiping and bitching and talking about this person, that person.
Everyone
just creating
degrades down to that standard.
and it's really bad.
Yeah.
So my point about before, just talking about if you are doing a good job with your talent acquisition, your talent pipeline, you have people lined up waiting to join your team before you can even afford to hire them. So at any given point in time, we've got 3 or 4 people that could start if I send them an employment contract, and we're just basically waiting for certain opportunities to fall into play, or someone to go on leave, or like different dynamics to play out. And it's like, look, you've passed the test. You're one of us. You're sitting on the bench. Unless there's a real urgency for them to leave their current job, then they're happy to wait. They're happy to wait to join a company. They're not just leaving. Really good talent is not just like going on Seek, and like they're actually picking the companies they want to work for. They're searching. They're going, who do I want to work for? Who do I want to work with? What products do I want to build? What's the next step for my journey? So as soon as you understand that, you start to think about, like, whether it's your social media accounts or the content you're publishing online in your name, like, if you were looking for a role and you were top tier talent, would those types of things be what attracted you to work for that business or that leader? So it's, I'm not saying we have the whole formula, because every now and again I get it wrong, just like everybody else. But this model ensures that you get it right far more often than you get it wrong, because the people that are really, really good talent, they're jumping ship without you even having to headhunt them. They're looking, they understand, they see the things that you're doing, they see the fun that you're having, they see that the business is not just about money and about dollars and cents. It's about like, actually, let's have fun while we're doing this. And I don't mean that you don't work hard. I just mean, like, don't take yourself so seriously. When you do, the customers can feel that. We have a fun old time. Even things like, when the brokers settle a loan, we built these dashboards that start to play their favorite song. So in some businesses they ring a bell or hit a gong or something. This is our version of that, but it's like they can change a song anytime they like. So it can be the song of the month, and we might do an 80s theme one day, or whatever it might be. But it's like, just understand that we're on this journey together, and if you make it sort of like a pressure cooker, not a lot of people are going to last, and you can create this sort of high staff turnover. If you make it a pleasant place to be and be around, and the amount of text messages or in the group chat I get where people are in on a Saturday and Sunday, we don't expect that, we don't ask for it, we don't even like celebrate it, but it's like clearly we're doing something right if people are willing to go in and not just work, but like they might go in and do a couple of hours of work and then watch the UFC or the football together.
Sure.
And that's as a team, like that's amazing. I'm not saying, hey guys, let's go and do this. It's just organically happening.
Yeah.
And so it makes me very proud when we see that stuff. But
you should be proud of that.
Yeah.
That's not something you can just synthesize or replicate. You kind of got to organically grow that. So question for you.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've got a pretty good lens on what you want your recruitment induction process to look like, of how people find you, come on that journey of starting and then beginning. Talk me through which parts are really important that you do and deliberately don't do in that recruitment process. So you said you don't do second interviews?
Yeah, where possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
But I never do any more than 2 interviews. The first one is usually enough. And what I do in the interview is not sell them the dream. I give them a tour of the office and the facilities, introduce them to some of the team members in the business. And then we sit down and I basically show them a day in the life of. So that might take me 30 minutes of an hour meeting. And then the next 30 minutes is me learning more about them and understanding how their skills are going to plug into what I've just showed them.
Yeah.
So it gives them more context for what they need to be talking about, and it helps me get to know them a little bit better. So, the first half of the interviews is pretty much just me talking. Obviously it's a dialogue, but it's mostly me talking and just showing them, like, here's the software we use, here's how customers find us, here's why marketing is really important to our business. Here's why this software is really important for our business. Here's how you do X, Y, Z tasks. Show them how simple, user-friendly the process is from their point of view. And then it goes into like, I'm not sitting there. I've already studied their resume. So I'm not spending time going through their resume. I already know what they did. I might ask them, when I read their resume before they come to the office, I might write some notes and questions that I have about specific roles or whatever. But there's an element of our office that has kind of created this. But I was speaking to somebody who's an expert in this sort of McCure is her name, and she's fantastic because she helps businesses build these recruitment journeys, and I had no idea that I was like what I was doing was actually like what she trains people to do. And so we had a couple of catch-ups. She's like, "You're doing that right without even like anyone telling you it's right." I was like, "Yeah, it just felt right, and I had good results,
felt right.
And it would be how I want to be treated." But one of the things that she said is that you're meant to give them a bit of a puzzle or a challenge, like, and that could be something really, really simple. But for us, our office is actually really hard to find if you've never been there before.
I can relate.
Not yet. I'm not referring to this one. I'm talking about our office in Rhodes.
Sure.
So the office in Rhodes, I basically, when I send the invite, I include a set of instructions. And people who are really diligent will follow the instructions and find you with no problem. But people who are maybe running a bit late, a bit flustered, not organized, they'll screw it up and they'll end up being 10 or 15 minutes late. So it's like, doesn't rule them out, but it's like, okay, yeah, you know what I mean?
That's your like litmus test.
It's a litmus test of like, is this person someone who can follow instructions if they're given really clearly? And it's not the only attribute you're looking for, but it's an attribute that you're looking for. Is like, is this someone I can give a task to and explain it to them properly? Because this is literally step by step by step. And if you follow it, you can't get it wrong because it's so specific that it's like there's a yellow line painted on the road and you need to follow it's literally that. Yeah. And then you get to the boom gate and you need to dial this number and then, So anyway, that's the sort of the pre-screening thing. If people have trouble finding our office, usually a sign that they probably not the most organized person and took time to read the email that I sent them of how to find us. And it is difficult to find, so you need to follow these instructions. So if they still get it wrong, it's like, all right, you've lost a point there. You still got time to save it, but you lost a point. But then it's all about understanding how you create an experience. So every person that comes in for an interview, I do call every one of them back and tell them the outcome. So if you've taken the time, because, as a candidate who's been on the other side before when I was much younger, there was nothing worse than interviewing for a job and then you just get total silence. It's actually, it's pretty sad.
It's demeaning.
It is. It really is. And it damages your confidence so much. So what I would usually do is have a really honest conversation with them and say, look, here is what you did really well. Here is what you might need to work on. Or in some cases, they're so good, but we just, someone just beat them in an area or something. It's like, we want to stay in touch because you're next on the list or, whatever it might be. But I have those honest conversations. Even though they're hard to have, I have those honest conversations. Onboarding is very important. So we make sure we send them an email. Here's what we need from you. We make sure their computer's set up, their hardware, their emails, we have this training system which ensures everybody gets the same training. It's repeatable and scalable, these modules that they have to complete before they can even pick up the tools, so to speak. So they can't pick up the phone and call a client or a lead until they've completed all of our internal training. It usually takes about a full day or a couple of full days for them to complete it. But that's systems, procedures, company values, all that kind of stuff. Just make sure that everybody's got a base level of understanding. And then there's ongoing modules that are like product knowledge and lending and how to read a set of financials and all this stuff to improve the skill set. And it takes really long to build it all out. But once it's built, it's just infinitely scalable. Like you don't need to, like every one of the people in our team that's done these modules has that base level of knowledge and understanding. And everybody who joins the business is going to get it as well. So they're going to acquire the skills and the knowledge. And we know that we're going to have like a baseline level of knowledge like this. And don't get me wrong, we'll continue to improve that. So the baseline level of knowledge eventually becomes up here. But that's really important. Give them a seamless, don't let them start and go, where's my computer? Where's my thing? Where's my, if you give out swag, t-shirts or whatever, like give it to them on the spot. Like I typically like to have the computer still in the brand new box with a Post-it note that has their login, take off the lid, still got the plastic on it if they want to pull it off, but it's already been set up, and then, a t-shirt, mug, whatever you do, right? Just make it seamless. Somebody in the team is responsible for taking that person on a tour. We also introduce them to everybody in the business, whether they're going to have direct interactions or not. But yeah, give them a tour of the office. There's a gym, there's a pool, there's a shopping center. We're going to go to lunch together today and I'll show you where the food court is. Like really important that they feel at home really quickly. And the main things are, like I said, don't leave everything until the last minute and let them turn up with nothing organized. Definitely don't do that. Don't put them through 6 interviews, and that sounds like a joke, but literally some companies do that and then they say no, and that literally the amount of time this person's taken to go through that process has cost them a lot of time and money and other opportunities as well, because they really wanted this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be 6 interviews in. So if your interview process is more than 2 interviews, you need to look at that ASAP. Nobody wants to do that shit. As simple as that. So
I don't do a series of interviews, but I usually do a series of chats.
Yeah.
Because like for us, when someone's coming on board as a broker, they're in a self-employed capacity. So there's quite a bit involved in them understanding what they're coming in for. So usually the first conversation is me talking through of like, look, this is what you can expect. This is how you're remunerated. This is what things look like. This is how we support you. These are the expectations and everything else. But that's usually a lot, and people tend to need to go away and digest that a little bit, and then they come back with a few more questions.
Of course, yeah.
Some important parts for me is I'm really big on transparency. So from that initial conversation, I'll go, these are the commission rates. This is a draft copy of the contract that you would eventually sign if we continue down this process. Here's what we're great at. Here's who we're not for. And I kind of give them like a reverse elevator pitch of like, these are the people we're really good for, but we're completely digital, so we're entirely remote. So if you like to come into an office every day and sit next to someone, we're probably not going to be a great fit for you.
Yeah.
These are the things that we do and accept, and these are the things that we don't do and we don't accept. And I kind of map that out for them. That can be a really important moment for people where they go, we get along really well. I'm excited by the lending lab, but from what you're telling me, maybe you're not the best fit for me. And then usually I'll go, well, I can introduce you to other brokerages that might be a better fit for what you're looking for. And it saves them the heartache of them coming on board, being there for 3 months, and then us going, not really working, let's, part ways. I'd rather call that pretty early. We do personality profile testing, not in a you pass or fail capacity. We do what's called the Myers-Briggs. There's like 16 different personalities. And it gives me a good idea of what they're like and what kind of roles they're going to fit well into and how they're going to gel with the team. So I've got Nick and I've got Jacob as 2 examples where Nick is a virtuoso. So it's really important to him that he's able to experiment and try different things and play around with new ideas. He's forever having new ideas of new processes and tools or side businesses or whatever. But it's integral that I allow him the freedom for him to do that and experiment. If I ever take that away from him, it would drive him insane.
Yeah.
But I've got Jacob, who's older than Nick, but Nick's, has more experience. But one of Jacob's, I think he's an analyst. And for him, he measures competency based on competency and respect go hand in hand. So you can say this person is superior, but he will not believe that you're able to lead him unless you can show him you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
So I kind of, day one of Jacob coming in, I go, it's going to be really important that Jacob understands how experienced and skilled Nick is, because if Jacob can't see it, then there's a risk there that I might get tension within the group. So kind of as I add each person into the business, I kind of got to figure out how they're going to play with each other, if that makes sense. I like your interview instructions of helping people to see how they solve problems.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite interview question?
Not really. The one I use a lot is trying to ask them what they're looking for out of their next role. And I say, if you could wave a magic wand, what is it that you would like to get? Let's fast forward 3 years. Like, what is it that you've achieved that you're really happy about? And the only reason I like that is it's open-ended. It sort of removes the magic wand is like a way to remove any sort of obstacles or preconceived ideas about what's achievable. You have a magic wand, so you get to wave it, and then what would you like to get out of the next, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, whatever. I don't like the standardized questions that's like, where do you see yourself? Because like, I just think this is a very different question. This isn't asking what they want out of their career. This is like, what is it that you want out of this job? Like, what is it that this job, what is it that you're seeking? What is this job that can do for you to give you that fulfillment? The other one that I don't mind is I'd ask them if I was a colleague of theirs and I'd worked with them for the last few years or whatever, what would they be known for? Like, what's their superpower around the office? And that lets them talk about their strengths. And I'm a big believer in like letting people lean into their strengths. But I usually just have conversations. It's actually very rare for me to do the interrogative style.
Sure.
I don't do that. We usually, sometimes the interviews are me walking around the business park, giving them a tour. Here's where the pool is and stuff like that. I never sit opposite because I'm like, I don't want them to feel, because what happens is you see them start sweating in their palms and they're tense, and then that's not the real version of them. That's some manufactured version of them that they feel like they need to be super stiff and prim and proper in an interview. I just want the layers to peel back, and I just want to have a conversation with them. So where possible, especially if I notice they're super tense, I'll get them up and I'm like, let's go and get a coffee. We're going to go walk down to the cafe and just like
try and relax them. And
just go, okay, this is, and I usually start the interview by saying, this is not going to be like an interview you've had before. It's not an interrogation. It's literally just a conversation, and ask questions, interrupt me anytime if you don't understand something. So that's, the style is very relaxed, conversational. I think you get a better understanding of that person in their natural habitat as opposed to the fight or flight response you might get if they're sweating and...
Or just the super rehearsed, what's your biggest weakness? What's your, like, some of those questions have been done to death to the point that people come in already prepared for them. So I agree, you probably need to give them something that opens them up a little bit to actually find out more about them.
Yeah, I agree. And asking them about their family, or what they do on the weekend, their hobbies, like, it's not a bad way to sort of find out who they are outside of work. But like I said, more often than not, it's very business focused, but it's making sure that they understand the job. Like, some people apply for it because they think it's all sunshines and rainbows. And then you're like, yeah, so basically here's the CRM. Here's, where the lead drops in, you got to call the client, and then you got to follow the bouncing ball, and you got to get the supporting documents. They might look at that and go, you know what, that sounds boring as shit. I don't want to do that. Have you got anything else? But at least that way, if you show them, you're like, this is what your day is going to look like.
Yeah.
Most of your days are going to look like where you're in this one system, and
then at least they know what they're signing up for.
Yeah, and you don't get the people that resign after a few days going, oh, it wasn't what I expected. It's like, I showed you exactly what to expect, So we never have that. And we do have, very low staff turnover, especially for our industry. And we end up with a pretty young bunch, because I think like for the pace and I think our average age is 28 or 29. And we have experience where it counts. And just because they're young doesn't mean they aren't experienced. Like, I'm 31, turning 32. And I've got 12 or 13 years. It's all I've ever known in asset finance. So, and there's a lot of people like that. They're late 20s, but they got 8 years, 9 years experience. Like, we've got some pretty good levels of experience, but it's a young team. So everyone's adaptable still. they're not fixed in their ways. And because we're fundamentally a tech and software business as well, they see how we iterate on software and they know that this is the same thing that's expected of them. You know, so but yeah, like I'd love, you know, you obviously got a big core part of your business is the mentorship part. Like what made you get into that? Is it because, you know, maybe like you had a mentor or maybe you didn't have one? Like what was the calling there?
So back when I was at Aussie, it was a pretty important part of the role. So I was looking after the mobile broker team. When I originally took it over, it was 33 brokers that I had to look after. I ended up having to kind of almost turn 50% of them over and recruited the team up to 38 within 18 months. But 25 of them were under 12 months of being a broker. Wow. So, you know, we'll be doing 7 or 8 interviews a week for potential brokers wanting to come in, which, you know, you kind of needed to figure out really quickly of kind of who was going to be well acquainted to being a broker and who wasn't going to do it. But I think in the end, I think 3 out of the last 5 rookies of the year came through that team at a national level. So we had some really great people, but it was interesting that the people that were really successful did not have similar backgrounds, but had similar temperament and skills. So the interview questions I asked kind of had to morph away from going through their resume. Like you said, it's a bit of a waste of time of, you know, talk me through every job and role you've got. And I kind of had to shift some of the questions to uncover what I really needed to know under it. So that part got really, really interesting. So my favorite interview question, to kind of cover that off, and then I'll answer your mentorship question. I realized that a lot of broking was really about communication skills. And I could teach people credit policy and credit analysis and following a process, and those things I could teach them. Attributes like following up and diligence and making sure they look after customers is kind of more habit-based than trait-based. But what I couldn't teach them was communication skills. So my favorite question was I would, you know, sit people down, would go through the whole interview process, and I would go, the last part of this interview is I want you to pick something that's really complicated that you already understand. It can be a recipe. It can be how a car radiator works. It can be fantasy football league rankings. It can be whatever you like. You get no bonus points for it being related to finance. I'm going to leave, give you 10 minutes to kind of collect yourself. When I come back, I want you to explain whatever this complicated thing is simply enough that I can understand it. You can use a notepad, you can use the whiteboard, you can use whatever you like. I just want you to show me something complicated you get and just make it simple for me.
Yeah, that's the Richard Feynman technique, the LE5. It's like, explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. And if you can't explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, it means you don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
But it's also, that's, you know, sort of him getting to, that's teaching skills, but equally in communication skills. If you can communicate it to a 5-year-old, that means you really understand the fundamental principles and concepts.
Agreed. Yeah. I found there were some people who they're like, I'm going to talk through soil rotation, and I've lived on a farm my entire life, and they understood it, but they could not explain it for the life of them.
Yeah.
And they had people that are like, this is how a car radiator works, and they draw it out and they explain how it all works and everything. And I go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But my thought process was, if you've never come from financial services and you want to be a mortgage broker, you're going to be explaining complex things to customers that don't know anything about this. So if you're not able to explain something you already know, then what chance do I have as a leader or a mentor teaching you something you don't know and then you being able to explain that? And I found that was a great filter of people. So some of the best people we had were like, yep, I was a motor mechanic for 25 years. Now I'm a broker and I'm doing amazingly well because I just know how to talk to people and explain things. And I figured if you already have that, the rest I could kind of teach around. But if you don't have that, I can't give that to you.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
no, that's a great question. That's why, like, I think communication skills are really important. You know, I think the subtleties in words, even just like the soft skills that you pick up from sales roles, retail roles, even before it's sales, like a sort of a higher level sales position. This the way that you ask questions. Like, you know, when brokers are new in our team and I hear them do a call, sometimes I cringe because I'm just like, I know they have to learn I know they have to learn, and they're doing a
Yeah.
good job, and they're talking to the customer really politely. But the way that they ask the question is wrong. Like that they almost give the client an opportunity to say no really easily. Whereas like I'll give you an example. Hey, we received your inquiry from such and such partner. Shana or John or whoever from Loan Options, and then they'll sort of say, "Are you still interested?" And the customer, of course, at that point in time can easily say no.
Yeah.
But they have inquired, so clearly there's some level of interest, and it's like should be more like going straight into the flow of saying, how can I help you? What questions did you have? How did you find the process? Is there anything further that I can help you with? Just want to explain the process to you. What we actually do is we go through this application process. It takes a few minutes over the phone, and we're going to be able to find you the best lender offer from over 75 banks and lenders. We'll save you thousands of dollars and a bunch of time without impacting your credit score. Like that is versus you getting to the point where you say, "Are you still interested?" And they say no. You go, "Okay, all right, see ya." You know what I mean?
It's almost asking for an objection.
Correct.
And asking for an objection that there's no way to go from there.
And the thing is, like the other one that I hear when people say is now a good time. Man, if you call my phone, it is never a good time. I can't imagine there's ever been nobody's ever asked me that question and I haven't got annoyed. And because it's like I've answered the phone, mate. Like just tell me what you want. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter if you're a cold caller or whatever. Just get straight into it. My team know because I am, despite me doing all of this stuff, I'm actually a man of very few words. I'm not the loudest person in the room by a long way. And so when people call me, and because my phone does ring a lot, so the default reaction is for them to like pretend that they're not calling me because they want something. But I'm like, I know why you're calling me, and it's totally okay for you to just go straight into the reason you're calling me.
Just tell me what it is.
Don't ask me how my dogs are. Don't ask me how, you know what I mean? Don't worry about that.
Yeah. The weather of the football team, how's your parents?
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
You don't need to do that with me
Yeah.
because I understand that we're all busy, and it's not gonna, if you call me and say, hey, Julian, or maybe even say hello. You go, Julian, what's the answer to this question? I'll give it to you, and I will jump off the phone, and that will not affect our relationship at all, because I'm past that point. You don't need to do that with me. But so now when I know people are going to dance around and do the small talk thing, I usually go, all right, talk to me. Like I will fish it out of them because, And anyway, but people actually like it when I say that. I'm like, tell me what you need. I'll make it happen, versus them having to dance around it. So people actually prefer it, but they just feel like it's rude, and it's not rude. It's like, I'm calling you. This is the method of communication to like get the answer fastest possible way I can get the answer.
Yeah. Like if this phone call was a text message, what would it say?
Yeah, 3 words.
What's actually the rate of this lender? You're like, the answer is this.
That's it. And my emails are very similar to that. My emails are very like, it depends who I'm emailing, right? If I'm emailing a client or a partner, there'll be the pleasantries in there. But if it's just internal communication, sometimes it'll be nothing in the body, just the answer in the subject. Because it's just like the fastest way to do it. And like, they'll ask a question, I'll just respond and change the subject line and then send. And that'll give them the answer. And if they need me to elaborate, email's probably not the place anyway, right? It's like, anyway, so it's funny, but so because it is a big thing with people is like communication skills are really, really important. But you also have to know that the way that you talk to a customer who you've never spoken to before, and the way that you talk to colleagues, I'm not saying be rude, right? And, if they, so it's very different, and you also have to value people's time and sort of get to the point quicker instead of exchanging 5 emails to get to the answer. Like, hey, how are you? Hope things are well. Here's the question I want answered. And then you can respond once. If they go, hey, how are you? How's things? You go, yeah, good, blah, blah, blah. You respond. And then they send another email. Like, you just lose so much time. So it's like, it's very important that people learn what the best way to communicate is, and different personality types. Like if you're talking to an accountant, that's a customer. That's a different communication style than if you're talking to someone who's maybe an arts teacher or something like that. You know? There's different types of buyers and things that they're looking for. The accountant wants everything, the analytical type that you mentioned before. He wants everything broken down dollar for dollar. If you need to disclose the mathematical formula of how you came to that conclusion, he wants that too. The lawyer is very similar. The lawyer wants to see the fine print. He wants to understand what he's signing. Whereas, I just use that as an example, but someone who's more of an emotional buyer wants to understand things like how long is it going to take, when can they pick up their car or their their motorbike or whatever it is, and so those are the things that you want to add. Doesn't mean you don't tell them the other things, but what you focus the body of the content on is here's how your application's progressing, here's how long it's going to take, here's when you'll be riding away, driving away, whatever, flying away if it's an airplane, whatever the asset is. And then, by the way, here's how much the costs are. And it's probably, yeah.
Well, I think those are the things that people really want to know, right?
Yeah.
So when you leave that context out of your communication, being a phone call, an email, whatever it might be, if those questions go unanswered, you can actually leave customers a little bit of anxiety of them going, I don't know how long it's going to take, or I don't know what it's going to cost, or I don't know what the process looks like. That, you can have the most amazing strategy email of every single thing that's going to be in there in the process. But there's a couple of really key points. If you don't hit them on the head, customers end up going, I'm not satisfied and I need to ask for clarification now because I just don't have clarity of what happens next.
Yeah, it's very true. And so I want to ask you about the Lending Lab. So you created this business, and how many people are in it now?
So I look
contractors
after,
and employees.
So the Lending Lab comprises of 4 brokers, and then I have 5 mentees. So it's a total of 9, but it's growing at a pretty rapid pace.
Yeah. And then you've got some other ventures that are starting out.
Correct. Yeah. So we're starting our own aggregation business. So it's myself, Nicholas Clunes is the co-director in the Lending Lab, and Andrew Stevens, who is a bit of an industry heavyweight, if you're familiar with him from Online Broker Think Tank. What we're kind of doing is consolidating our skills. So for me, it's around the mentoring, coaching of brokers and getting them up to speed, and marketing, technology, tech. How do I help them flesh out a functioning business? Nick is very, very skilled in complex, deep credit analysis and finding solutions. And Andy, from a coaching point of view and recruitment, is quite strong. So we're kind of joining together to make an entity where we'll have a brand that people can come under, or they can come under the Lending Lab, or they can bring their own brand and we'll kind of help them make it in different stages and tiers of commissions and things like that. But we're pretty excited to go from 9 brokers to 25 to 50 to beyond. But that's probably a month or 2 away from going live. So watch this space.
Yeah, awesome. And if you were sort of giving advice to yourself, let's say maybe after the Harvey Norman situation, if you go back in time, you went through there, almost got your own store, didn't quite work out, weren't really happy with the model. What's the advice that you would give to that version of yourself?
So in the early part of your career, I think you're trading your time for money because it's the most valuable commodity that you happen to have. And you should be building yourself up to the point that you can trade your skills for money. Then as you kind of build yourself up, you start to trade your experience and your skills for money. And then it probably ends up being your experience, your skills, and your network. And what you're known for is what you trade. So if I was to speak to a much younger 20-year-old version of myself, I would probably instruct myself to focus more on which skills are actually valuable and focus less on, image or results or whatever else, and focus much more about growing valuable skills really deliberately. Like what skills are valuable to employers or to yourself, and try and really hone in on that.
And your point about the network is really important. There's a great saying that says you should be building your network years before you ever need it. Mm-hmm. And that's a really important saying. And the reason for that is if you're trying to build your network and you immediately start asking for something, you're not really building your network. You're just burning bridges because people are like, oh, you just want something. That's the only reason why you're having this conversation with me.
You haven't built any goodwill.
Exactly right. So, what you need to do is be willing to give without any expectation of receiving, and understand that more often than not, you will not ever receive back. But don't do it for that reason. Do it for the fact that this person may know that person who all of a sudden trusts you because you did build this goodwill. And there's so many powerful tools these days. It's so easy to build a network, and it doesn't have to be old school, pounding the pavement, networking events and all that kind of stuff. That still works, don't get me wrong. But there are other ways to do that as well. Like you can create a newsletter on LinkedIn, and myself and a colleague, we did it. We got 2,300 subscribers in a month. Like crazy numbers. I don't even know how many are subscribed now. It's probably 2.5 plus 2,600. And we've published a few editions now, but this is people that are 50% viewership, like 50% of the subscribers are reading. It's really high. So you're building this ecosystem. LinkedIn, another one, people creating videos on TikTok and other things. Like I'm not talking about dancing videos. I'm talking about like actual valuable content.
Yeah.
Like Louis from Odin Finance, Louis Dib.
Yep.
Does these great videos. They're like very like low production. Like they're not like studio, like, but he's giving great information and people love that. And, now he's doing really well out of it. So, I think like he's building a network, he's building his personal brand, which is what networking is. Personal brand is just another word for creating a network. Like what really ultimately is a personal brand. A personal brand is your connections, your contacts, your goodwill, your the way that people, like, are you a thought leader? Are you like, that's what you're building with a personal brand.
I heard a great saying that your personal brand is how someone else would describe you if you weren't around.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think that's a fair.
So if you're like, if you think you're amazing and everyone loves you and whatever else, but everyone else will describe you completely differently, then that's not your personal brand.
Describe you as a fuckwit.
Yeah, if they're like, he's a dickhead, then like, unfortunately, that just is what it is.
It is, yeah. I think that's an accurate assessment. Like, if you think about it really, like, there's a lot of people that, sort of very good at making things seem like they're super amazing and that they're really big and that people value their time and their money, their advice for money and all this kind of stuff. But the reality of it is sometimes those people haven't actually walked the walk themselves. There's a lot of business coaches out there that haven't really run or had much success running businesses. And so that's like
the amount of times I've seen the advice of, if you're a business coach and you're struggling to get customers, double your price and go rent a Lamborghini. And then all of a sudden you're, the business coach of business coaches.
Wow. That's scary.
But unfortunately, it's so stereotypical because it works. And there's a lot of people that go, I haven't walked the walk and I don't have the skills or experience to really be able to do what I want to do. Rather than going and doing it, I'm just going to get a fake Rolex from Bali. I'm going to rent a car that I don't own. And then I'll put up the image of success without having really any substance behind it. But it's a hollow way to live, and it's a hollow way to run a business.
Yeah, I agree. I think, that you're no different to a con man if you're doing that, So, but look, there are certainly good people out there. There are some people who have lived it, and those are probably the people you need to be taking advice from. There's other things you can do as well. Like you can join communities and sort of networking and networking events and all those kinds of things. And I think, there's no right or wrong answer. Some people aren't extremely extroverted, and so they feel like really anxious about those types of environments. And I think, you just need to go. And the first time you go to one of these networking events, if it's an important one for your industry or whatever, go. You might be in the corner, go with someone you know so it's not as awkward. The next time you might have 2 conversations. The next time you might have 10 conversations. But slowly over time, you won't even notice it. But all of a sudden, you'll start to be really comfortable in those environments. And that's pretty much what I've done. the first couple networking events, 10 plus years ago that I went to were with Toyota Finance. I literally stood in the corner, found somebody that I half knew and just spoke to them. And I was just like, and now I feel totally comfortable in those environments because enough people know me that, I can say hello and there's a few people around and it's not as awkward. But also, I just feel so much more comfortable because at the end of the day, I know that like nothing bad's going to happen. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to end up, having a few nibblies and a couple of drinks and, nothing bad can come of it. It's not like, you get, and as long as you don't embarrass yourself by drinking too much or something like that, nothing bad can really happen at those events. You might feel a bit of butterflies because you're nervous or you're a bit out of your comfort zone, but just go and do it. Go and start building your network because at some point in time you may want to start your own business and then you may need to call upon the network for whatever it is. Or you may need to call upon your network because you're looking for someone to help you with processes in your business, or you're looking for a COO, or you're looking for someone who's a team leader, or, but if you've got that network and you know all these people and they know you and you've built that relationship with them, it helps in all the other areas of your business.
Well, one of my favorite sayings is that life moves at the speed of relationships. And I kind of, you mentioned it before, there's so many people that they don't build the network they need until they get to the point that they need it. And I think too many people do that, where they focus very narrowly on, I'm just going to punch widgets and climb leaderboards and do whatever. And they want to take the next step up, either in business or career or whatever. And they turn around and they go, I haven't interacted with anyone around me. No one's gone on this journey with me. I don't have any connections. And it's almost like they need to kind of tread water for a few years to build what they should have been building the whole time. I'm Adelaide born and bred, and I've got some friends that went through doing a law degree in Adelaide University of Adelaide. It's quite famous for the fact that there'll be 1,000 graduates a year and 100 jobs. And every year, everyone that graduates, out of law, everyone is competing for the same jobs, but you're competing against the rolling last 5 years of everyone else that didn't get a job. And I saw them go through the process and they went, I've graduated, this is great, but now they've dropped the ball on us that we should have been interning into law firms the whole time and attending events and trying to build a LinkedIn and trying to build a connection. And there were people that were doing that in year 1 or 2 of their degree and kind of just dovetailed immediately into a firm because they already had relationships. Well, everyone else just got to the finish line, crossed, got the certificate and went, now what do I do? And the real world's like a punch in the face, where they're just like, I didn't realize that I should have been doing this the whole time.
Yeah, they're all valid points, mate. I think some of the best people that we have in our business started as interns, unpaid interns. Like we've got some great software, data science people. They started as interns. And, they basically made it so that it was impossible for me not to hire them. They worked their asses off.
You knew
they
them?
proved themselves. I knew them.
Yeah.
And so now, one of them I co-authored the newsletter I was talking about with, he's the most, he's one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And I mean that. But he wasn't afraid to put his pride down and say, I don't know everything and I want to find someone or somewhere that I can work and learn and for it to be okay for me to try things and fail, the test and learn thing, it's really big for us. But well, look, the only other thing, there's one more thing left. I would love to kind of, as is tradition on here, I'd love to get you to give us your 60-second pitch. Tell us, why somebody should use the Lending Lab, or if you want to pitch the sort of the value proposition of the aggregation side, go ahead and do that. And then if there's anything else you want to cover as well, feel free to add that as well.
All right. Well, let's go to the Lending Lab. We'll pick the business that's functional to start off with. So I'll tell you who we're for and who we're not. So we are digital based. So if people want a broker that is actually excited by complexity, so if you're a business owner and investor, you have a self-managed super fund, but you're a mover and shaker and you want to take steps forwards with your finance and you want a broker that's on board for that journey, not scared or inconvenienced by it, then we're definitely for you. If you want someone that faxes everything and sends you, statements in the mail and does everything paper-based, then we're not for you. So we like to use technology not to replace the human interaction, but to try and make the process actually easier and simpler for customers so we can spend more time on the parts of the process that actually make a difference for the customer.
Amazing. Digital, seamless, that's right up my alley, mate. So,
I don't know if we're quite at your level yet, but I'll happily climb your coattails if we can.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's a very kind compliment, but yeah, look, we're still a work in progress, but happy with that progress, but we'll never give up on trying to continuously improve our business, our products and services. So, but it's been an absolute pleasure, and I thank you for coming all the way as well.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're a gentleman. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Fabien.
Thank you.